Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have lots to talk about, lots of games last night, some series ending, some series continuing. We will start, as always, with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, something caught my eye on Twitter today.
Some series continuing.
It was the Buffalo Bills. They are now the proud owners of their own stadium named Buffalo Bills Stadium. Now,
Bills Stadium.
Sorry. As bland as that is, I came up with 3 alternative names that I felt like they could have used while they're waiting for a sponsor that really they could have picked up.
I have one. You do yours, and I have one.
Ever since July 15th, they've had a chance to pick up sponsorship, but
here's the thing. You've got to remember that, and being in Buffalo, I know the history. They were originally, for I think it was over 20 years, called Rich Stadium for Rich products. Bob Rich was a minor owner of the Buffalo Sabres. I don't think he had owned any stock in the Bills. Was the owner of the AAA Buffalo Bisons. Then it switched to, and they were looking for somebody for significant revenue with the naming. And at a point, they couldn't find anybody, and that's not, I think they were just looking for the right fit, and they named it Ralph Wilson Stadium for the owner, the former owner. Right. And now it's been New Era Field. I can't remember if there was another name.
I always liked the name named Ralph Wilson because it was so easy, just called the Ralph.
Right.
It just fit Buffalo.
Here are my 3 names.
Okay.
So the first one would be Wide Right Stadium. There's actually a beer in Canada that uses that
What a schwanz.
There's a beer in Canada that uses that. Thermal Stadium, I thought would be a good one for a lot of different reasons. And then Anchor Bar Outpost. Those are my 3.
I got mine. Are you ready for mine?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Zubaz Field.
What was it? Sorry?
Zubaz Field.
Oh, God.
Bring your pants.
Yeah, if it has any association with Anchor Bar, it's sponsored by Murder Incorporated.
I'm just surprised they've had over since July 15th to get a sponsor.
Well,
they haven't been able to do it.
Russ, I think it's the problem is that we're in the era of the virus, and a lot of these companies are not going to spend millions of dollars on naming rights, so they're going to wait until the economy picks back up, and then find some. As long as
Purell or some toilet paper company would have done it.
Yep. Purell Field.
Yeah, I don't think they want to name it Depends Stadium.
No, Charmin Stadium.
Charmin Stadium. Charmin.
Because you want to be known as soft. That's clearly what you want your football to be known as.
Hold on, let me think here.
One Ply Stadium, is that better, Russ?
Yes.
Purell Field. I like that one. I'm trying to think of another good one.
I was waiting for you to come up with like 4 Super Bowls, no title stadium or something like that.
Now, how about Richard Todd Stadium?
Hey, Steve Freeman, baby, kept patting the ball. That's what happens.
Bill Simpson.
Here's the fun part.
Bill Simpson.
Hey, my team still has a ring on its finger. What about yours?
Oh, we're now degenerating into this, aren't we?
Okay. All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is
Machine Gun Kelly Stadium. There you go.
Jim Kelly?
Machine Gun Kelly Stadium.
Yeah. I won't make the joke that I was going to make. But hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, August 20th, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine.
I'm Anthony Mangione.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with the game that we were talking about during the show yesterday, and at the point that we ended the show, it looked very good for the Columbus Blue Jackets to extend the series to a Game 6. They were, I can't say dominating. I think what John Cooper said in the post game was pretty accurate. The Lightning had the advantage in the first 10 minutes. The Blue Jackets had the advantage in the next 45, and at that point they were leading 4-2, and all they had to do was protect the lead to extend the series. But like they did in Game 4 against Toronto, the defensive-minded Blue Jackets couldn't hold the lead. They blow a two-goal lead late in the third on a goal that I thought was a little disputed, but there didn't seem to be any kind of review of it, where Cirelli I think turned his skate, but didn't kick it. And
no distinct kicking motion, but clearly I thought at least warranted a review because you can clearly see that he turned the skate to make contact. I thought at least we'll get a review.
Right. And then the hero, once again, in overtime is Braden Point, who they take advantage of a really bad giveaway in the Blue Jackets zone. Kucherov feeds him in front of the net, and he backhands it past Korpisalo for the series winner. Tampa Bay moves on to the second round and gets, I would say, sweet revenge, Russ, on John Tortorella, who we'll talk about in a minute, but on John Tortorella and the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation where Columbus, played their hearts out. They did everything they could. They're just outmanned. I mean, they just don't have the same kind of players that Tampa has, and you could only hold those players back for so long. And Torts, he did a good job coaching, but, and Jarmo Kekalainen put together a pretty good team, but now going into next year, they have to look at it again and say, we still need more scoring. Like we all thought they needed scoring in the offseason, but we also thought they weren't going to make the playoffs. They made the playoffs. They had a pretty good run of it considering.
Yeah. I mean, for me, looking at the Jackets, well, the reasons why I didn't like their chances in this series again, they had some horses in that series last year. You had Panarin still. Yep. You had Matt Duchene. You had Ryan Zingle. You had just three additional players that added depth. And again, if you're the Jackets, you do want to see some of your young players getting a bigger bite and getting an opportunity here, obviously, to move things forward. But I don't think anybody was under. And of course, you did have Sergei Bobrovsky last year as well. Take that for what it is, but Bob was still, Bob at that point, at least in Columbus's system. So adding those things to the mix, I think last year they were a better matchup against Tampa from a talent perspective. It's just as time went on, and I do think a little bit that 5 overtime game, it had its effect at various times in the series, especially for the losing side in this case. It was just a lot to take out, and to know you're already behind. It was the equivalent, again, almost of playing almost a 7-game series in some ways.
Jan. I
mean, the problem with Columbus is they don't have a second-round pick next year. They don't have a third-round pick next year. So that hurts them in terms of trying to build a roster. I mean, we all like what we saw to Liam Foudy. We think the future is bright. I mean, hopefully they get Josh Anderson back. We'll see what happens there. They do have some salaries on the books that they would love to, I'm sure, get rid of. That's going to be difficult. But we do think they seem to have their pair in net for a while with Korpisalo and Merzlikins at a fairly reasonable cost. To me, from the Tampa side, I mean, great they came back. I mean, my question is where the heck were they in the second period? It's almost like they stopped playing in the second period, and Columbus just took the game to them, which that gives Cooper a little bit of motivation when they get back to practicing, for preparation next round. But, we said before, and I mean, we talked about history. I mean, that as Anthony said, that 5 overtime game, we both said during the game, look, this is a game Columbus has to win, because if you're an underdog, this is a game you have to win, because if not, besides the fact that you're now tired, you're now getting down 1-0 and trying to come back against them. So we'll have to see what happens there for Tampa. Look, we all thought they have the components to make a very long run and potentially make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. It's a matter of whether or not they could wash the bad taste from last year out of their mouth. Now they basically have erased that history to a certain extent, and now get to rest up a little bit until the other rounds finish to be ready for the second round of the playoffs.
Well, there is a rumor online that maybe Marchenko's thinking about coming over. He could play, man. He already had a good year for Siska. Like if he were to come over, that would certainly help their scoring. But that's always like a pie in the sky kind of thing.
For a second, I thought you were referring to Alexei Marchenko, the former wing and lead. Yeah, no, I know who you're talking about. Okay. But this is the thing. It's like for all the departures that happened last year, you would think that Columbus has a ton of cap space, and they don't. They re-signed Merzlikins at $4 million. They signed Mikhail Grigorenko to come over from the KHL. He'll be over next year. They only have a little over $5 million in cap space. So as Jan was saying, there are players I'm sure that they would like to find a home for Alexander Wenberg after he's had 2 disappointing seasons in a row. I don't believe that they'll qualify a guy like Devon Shore, who they got in the deal.
I think they're going to stick with Wenberg, Mike. He actually did okay the last couple of games.
Better, but the problem is they also need to find money to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois, and the question is going to be how much money is he going to get as an RFA this year?
Right, and like honestly, if you're going to sign him to a long-term deal, then you're probably talking north of what Ryan Johansson and what Duchesne got from Nashville. You're talking about probably $9 million on a long-term deal at least.
Yeah, they'll probably bridge him first. I don't think they'll give him a long-term deal.
Well, and we know that they have good young players like Texier, and I was impressed with Foodie, but I didn't agree with the assessment that they were talking about on Hockey Central regarding that they need to improve the depth on their defense.
No, I don't think so.
Their defense is fine right now with Werenski, Jones, Savard, Gavrikov, and then Ryan. Yeah, Ryan Murray. Will Andrew Peak make it?
He could. He could. And that's another guy who could play a little bit physical, skates well. I think they're okay on defense. Savard actually opened my eyes. He really was great.
And I think you're going to have to separate Jones and Werenski again to kind of maximize.
Yeah, exactly. I think
you can't. It's great to load them up if you want to, but it has a trickle down impact. Separating the two of them, they're going to play major minutes, which saves your third pair a little bit. And anybody who pairs with them should grow throughout the season when they're paired with one of those guys.
I think it worked well against Toronto because Keefe sort of played into it by putting everybody together, Tavares, Marner, Matthews, and then they matched up Werenski and Jones against them, and that neutralized the Leafs offense. The thing is with Tampa Bay is that they're too deep. And, their third line, the Gord, Coleman line with Goudreau, killed them in a couple games.
And it's the type of depth that they added as well. The fact of the matter is Columbus had just a lot more sandpaper and grit than they did in last year's playoff, whereas this year they made the acquisitions that they needed to augment the offensive talent that they already have.
Yeah,
so it's just a different team. It's a different Tampa team this year.
Yeah, and one other thing in terms of their salary cap, Dubinsky, if he goes on LTIR, which is very possible because I don't think he played at all this year. I don't
think he did either.
Yeah, that's another almost $6 million. So that would give them the room to be able to sign Dubois on a long-term deal. It was funny because when I posted that quote about that Tortorella, because remember, I'm watching the post game here, and I'm expecting Tortorella to actually be more relaxed and more expanding in his answers because the series is over with.
Right.
Honestly, I'm not surprised because of the way the game finished. He's just an emotional. He just runs on his emotions. And if this was a game where, hey, they were out of it, it was like, it was like 3-1, 4-2, 5-5, whatever.
Right.
Then John might be a bit more circumspect. I just felt like he just this is who he is.
Yeah.
And he just blowing a lead like that when they had a chance to advance, that was just too much for him.
Yeah, he talked about, not going to give you this touchy-feely crap, and he says basically, peace out. And I don't think
again, look, part of it was touchy-feely, right? Because part of it was, being around his team all the time, talking about quote-unquote moral victories, right? But part of that question was, what's life like been in the bubble? Is a fairly decent question to ask.
But I would say
people want to know. Granted, maybe the situation is not ideal given the timing.
No, I thought it was a good question.
It's a good question, but I would say, Jan, at the same time, I think this is more of a post game. Again, this is a case where, and again, the problem is, again, you have limitations with regard to when you have access. So maybe if they had the following day and say, hey, John's going to talk about the whole season, maybe that's probably the time to talk about it. Whereas they're still hot and emotioned 10 minutes after the game. Again, I'm not making completely an excuse for it, but I kind of do get, sometimes the timing of a question is.
But there's a way to respond also, right? He very easily just said, "Look, guys, we're too fresh in the moment for me to answer it. I'll happily answer that or consider answering that question down the line." This is Tortorella, right? I saw enough press.
I'll tell you what bothered me.
Exactly.
But he also fails to recognize, right, that the reporters have the job to do also, and there's a way to be civil to a certain extent in the conversation while not answering the question also.
What bothered me is, and he did this in 2 or 3 of his post games, he keeps looking right if there's a question that he doesn't like. And it's like, is that the PR guy he's looking at? Like, answer your own question. Be a big boy and answer your own question.
Or Aaron Portzline, seeing if he's the one who asked the question and seeing if he wants to answer it.
No, and he also, and I don't know if he's got a hearing problem, but he also is like, I couldn't understand what he was asking. Sort of like that was his way of not answering the question. I can't hear what they're asking about. Who was that? Who are they asking about? Did that a couple times.
I think he just couldn't hear that. I honestly
that's the case. Then that's.
But the other ones, he's just looking to the side when he doesn't feel like he likes the question. Like, come on.
But
and it's like, you know what? This is your job.
But my overall opinion of Columbus here is I think they're a very good system team. They follow what Tortorella does to the letter, but the problem with what they did last year, and I will to my dying day say it was stupid for them to do what they did, was they sold out draft picks and futures for a 1-year swing at the fences. I don't think they were a team that you could say was going to win the Stanley Cup, and they added, and they knew they weren't going to be able to sign any of these guys. And now this team, if they had those assets to go out and add players to this team, I think they'd be in good shape, but they don't have the assets. They don't have the cap room. They don't have the draft picks. So unless they're going to make some significant deals, and I don't know where they can do those, and if they're going to trade like a Boone Jenner or somebody like that, they've got 2 years left on contracts to Seth Jones and Werenski. Then Jones is a UFA, and Werenski's 1 year away from being a UFA after that. They got a window, and that I don't know if those guys are going to re-sign in Columbus. So.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm not sure.
Just touching on Tampa Bay quickly, I think that, again, the additions that they made at the deadline, even though very costly, they cost themselves the equivalent of 3 first-round picks, a Nolan Foote, and 2 firsts. Coleman and Goudreau made a big difference in the series. Bogosian, by actually staying on the ice and staying healthy, was part of their depth mix and on the right side and really helped them out. He provided them a little bit of toughness. They got really good goaltending from Vasilevsky, and if they do get Stamkos back at some point, I mean, they can definitely use him, but they seem to be operating.
They're winning without him. There's no reason to put him in.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the next round starts what, Monday?
Monday or Tuesday, yeah.
Right. So he has like another 5 days, right, to just even.
This is perfect. This is perfect timing for them to be able to graft him back in practice and see where he's at, and then get him in. I don't think you want to not have Steven Stamkos in your lineup, especially if it's in the event that it is.
No, but if he's fragile, if he's fragile and they know he's fragile, then they might keep him out.
No, then that's something they'll have to make an evaluation on. Obviously, you're going to throw him into the fire if you feel like he's physically not ready to go.
Well,
I mean, again, if you need as many. Again, if it ends up being Boston,
right,
you need to have as many. You need to have all guns on deck.
I mean, worst case scenario, if he's capable of playing limited minutes, you could put him in place of a Mitchell Stevens or a Carter Verhaeghe on the 4th line and use him on the first power play. I mean, they can get away with that because they're so deep and talented. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But they've advanced in the second round, and boy, John Cooper seemed very happy. He was essentially verbally pumping his fist after they won that game yesterday. Now, the other team in the East that advanced was the Boston Bruins, 2-1 victory over the Carolina Hurricanes.
The old plow horses, as the chat room called them when I stuck with them. Yeah.
I thought they were going to win. And 2 power play goals. It's that 5-man unit that cannot be stopped. Krejci, Krug, and the whatever the line, the league's best line, and Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak.
The perfection line is the
perfection line.
Yeah, but it's a lot. I mean, you see what they can do. I mean, even if they're not necessarily putting out great shots, just Bergeron knows how to do the little things like a Messier used to know how to do to annoy a goaltender, shoot at weird angles, hit it off his foot, throw it off the back wall, all those kinds of things, and it creates offense. And, having Pasternak back was huge, though. Like, once Pasternak came back, that's a big thing.
And Halak played much better yesterday than he did in Game 4. I need to concentrate on the Hurricanes because I'm sorry, if you're not going to tell me after that elimination, if you're Don Waddell and you say to yourself, oh, we don't need a goaltender, somebody should beat you over the friggin' head. Because the Reimer and Mrazek cost them a series.
Game 4 and Game, no question. I mean, you have a bet. And again, while the numbers on them look good in the series, if you look at their overall numbers, they look good. You just kind of know that there's going to be something that happens, some sort of mistake that's going to occur that is going to be a potential backbreaker. We saw it with Reimer in Game 4, and then we saw it with Mrazek in Game 5.
And so actually – sorry to interrupt, Dan. So Waddell just said they're giving up a third for Vatanen to the Devils.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big deal too.
Yeah, and Vatanen is.
It's depth-wise, they're a damn good team. It's like to me, Carolina is literally to me right on the cusp.
They are, but they need
when Tampa steps back.
That Bergeron goal was a killer, Anthony. I mean, as you said, you can't in any I mean, square yourself to the post. Don't even let remotely get it close. You go down on a knee with, I mean, that's just, as you said, bad goals at bad times. The inability to make a key save at a key time. That's what separates a champion from a team that's going home, unfortunately.
Go ahead.
If I'm Carolina, again, the guy, if you're keeping one or getting rid and looking to acquire another goaltender, to me, any way you can honestly jettison Peter Mrazek, I would do it. I think Reimer is perfectly fine as a backup.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But Mrazek is the one who's got. I think of the two, Mrazek's got to be the one that gets jettisoned.
Well, here's the question: Does Waddell make a big run if he is available at Robin Lehner now this offseason because he didn't do it?
It's going to cost him more, though. He could have gotten.
Well, again, you learned from your mistakes, right? And then if you have to overpay to remediate a mistake.
Yeah,
you're going to have to remediate a mistake.
Telling that boss that.
Right. We do know that they tried to trade for him, and they didn't want to give up the first-round pick that they eventually gave up for Brady Shea.
Thank you very much.
So, yeah, exactly. So, now there's going to be some changeovers because of expiring contracts. Vatanen is a UFA. I don't know if he's going to be back. Edmondson is a UFA, and so is Trevor Van Riemsdyk on the blue line. I don't think Justin Williams will be back.
I think they try to bring back Vatanen, actually. I really do, because I do think they need that element on their blue line.
Yeah, but this, Jan, right now, okay, for next year, this is what they have right now. They have Slavin, they have Shea, they have Pesce, they have Dougie Hamilton. They have Jake Gardner at $4 million. They have Hayden Fleury in he's coming off his ELC, and they have Jake Bean. I don't think that they're going to go out and sign Vatanen for.
No, they're not going to sign Vatanen. But if Edmondson wants to come back cheap, I'll take him.
Sure. Yeah, he's a good bottom, 4, 5, 6 defenseman, and maybe they bring back Van Riemsdyk. But I think that they're going to spend their money elsewhere when it comes.
I don't know how much they're going to spend. I mean, again,
not much. Yeah,
that's the whole thing. I mean. We could say they need a goalie and they should pay Leonard his money, but again, you have to go to that boss and tell him, yeah, we're going to pay Leonard now when they didn't want to pay him before.
Right. All right. I buried the lead because this game was wild, was nuts for a number of reasons, and I have, I watched a lot of it, and I have to say,
Mike stayed awake.
Yes, I did. And I stayed awake
from. What would have happened if you slept? And yesterday you were like, "I'm going to sleep through the game."
Based on the
and look what you would have missed.
Based on the 2 previous games, they must have just saved up their energy for this side show. But okay, I give Montreal a lot of credit to put the effort in to stay in this series and to extend it with a 5-3 victory, but they shot themselves in the foot in a couple instances. Whatever Jesperi Kotkaniemi was thinking on that hit, because that turned the game around and put it in going in the direction of the Flyers, and I was surprised that Montreal bounced back from that. But the 5-minute major for boarding and a game misconduct was it Sanheim that he hit?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just an utterly stupid hit.
It's a dumb play by a young player. That's all.
Yeah. He's been physical throughout the series, and this was where he got a bit over exuberant with it. And that's, I think, it was. Chris Therien kind of said he thought it was kind of borderline.
Yeah, but I don't think it was. I don't think it was.
And I'm up in the air on it, but I think if there's enough of a reason to think about it, it probably is.
I'll tell you who deserves a raise is Jim McCrossan. Getting him stitched up, Sanheim stitched up in time to get him back out there. That was impressive.
But there
was a lot of blood all over the ice yesterday from several players, including Brendan Gallagher.
Well, we'll get to that one.
But this was a game where people who I thought were sort of absent without leave for long stretches during the playoffs showed up. I mean, Joel Armia with a couple goals for the Canadians. Voracek with 2 power play goals for the Flyers. I hadn't been impressed with him up to this point, but he had a really good game.
No, that looked like Jake Voracek. He had
one of them. He got a little lucky because it went off the defenseman.
But it doesn't matter. He was more aggressive. Yeah. He was actually doing the right things with the puck in the offensive zone instead of just these weird passes. He wanted to score.
But he did have kind of a
bad penalty though.
He had a couple penalties in the game. That was a pretty bad one late, which really kind of took the sail out of Philadelphia. That being said, I don't think it takes away from his performance, which again, he played when he's when he plays like a man possessed, he's extremely difficult to stop. And Montreal had all kinds of problems trying to keep him in check.
But I'll give Montreal credit because before he got hurt, Gallagher took a lot of guys out of their game. Konechny is completely out of his game. Konechny, we know he could be driven by his emotions, and right now he's being driven by his emotions.
Gallagher is the guy he's most like Konechny.
I know.
He's a young version of Gallagher.
Yeah.
Right down to the jersey number and everything else.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Gallagher. Okay, Gallagher in the
to me, the
Brendan
most
Gallagher went in my ear there, apparently.
I was saying Gallagher in the first 4 games of the series, he saw his ice time decreasing. I think it was each game,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden he's like a tornado in this game, and being the center of all controversy.
Yeah.
Niskanen is having a review.
He's going to have a hearing later today.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if he doesn't get suspended for.
I know.
a game.
Yeah.
I think he gets tagged. I think he gets tagged for a game. And there's some people brought up, well, Gallagher was, looked like he cross-checked him prior to that play. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Even if he did, were the cross-checks taking place?
Right.
Yeah.
Lower back, and Niskanen literally, it's hot, and it's right into his
And
jaw.
AV's short. AV's Gallagher's too short thing. Is just funny.
Gallagher's going to be back for next game.
I expected Alain
Gallagher
Vigneault
needs
to
inserts
drop
in his
off.
skates for next game.
I expected Alain Vigneault to drop, but he's a short comment in there because honestly, AV loves this stuff.
He does.
He loves this stuff, And
Gallagher, I gotta say, he looked like Nosferatu with that smile, man. And the
Dracula is what he got
No,
called.
he looked
on.
like
and
the Joker with
the fact that they took
blood was high up to the nose.
they took a tooth out right on the
There's
bench.
like at least 2. Like one was definitely like sort of out loose, but I
It
mean,
was
listen,
unbelievable.
and here's
he smeared the blood on his.
here's the other thing.
The
Now, the
ruby
other-
red lips he had going towards the end of the game there.
Now here's one other point that we're going to make. Obviously, is as many of us did shortly after Montreal, utilizing their social media very effectively and trying to make an argument. This is the new standard of gamesmanship. They had the corner camera angle, and not only that, they played it at normal speed, and in the second that Niskanen is about to close, they go to super slow-mo, like it's the freaking Zapruder film. Just, it's like back and to the right.
No, back to the left.
Back and to the left as Gallagher goes down, and then it's back at full speed.
They got Costner to narrate it.
It was kind of like, yeah, it looks. I mean, as soon as I saw that angle, anybody after I tweeted, everybody had commentary where, yeah, that's bad. He's going to get suspended, and then you got others saying, well, putting it into super slow mo.
No.
But in reality, you could say what it is, but at the end of the day,
Niskanen has this.
You cross-checked it in the face,
Right.
And you want to get suspended.
Niskanen has this side to him. He was fined in February for slashing. Like he plays tough. Niskanen is.
In the
has that
postseason,
side.
this is who he is. He's been in the playoff wars. He knows what happens and what needs to be done. It was several times Gallagher had, I know at one point of the game he had tried to go Provorov into a fight.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Provorov wouldn't fight.
He wouldn't do it.
So he went. So again, Niskanen, he tried to go after Niskanen. He was doing again. Gallagher's doing exactly what he needs to do, which is to get under the skin of Flyer players. He was in that game, whereas before Gallagher hadn't even been mentioned in the prior 4.
And I have to say this. I mean, having covered Suzuki a lot, he already apologized. That wasn't really like a mean thing. I think he did it and he realized, oh, that was dumb that I did it. And even Kevin Hayes said, look, he's immature. And Kevin Hayes knows about being immature. He was immature early in his career. So that was a very mature comment for Kevin Hayes to say. I don't know if Suzuki's going to get clobbered for it. I actually think.
I don't think so. I think it's a lot.
It would have happened. It would have happened already. It would have happened, I think, during the game.
Yeah.
I mean, but besides the point, that play, I thought he was actually Montreal's best forward on the ice last night. He was all over the place yesterday. I mean, he had a phenomenal game, in my opinion, last night.
He could have broken again with that offside call. He could have had the game would have been, I think, broken for Philadelphia at that point. had that offside call not happened.
The unusual thing here is that Montreal won a non-Montreal type game where they actually scored goals. They actually got enough offense to be able to be, you normally if you score 3 goals against them, they're not going to score 4. They scored 5. And I thought that the interesting thing, and I know there was a little bit of a play on social media asking for a look at Couturier's cross-check on Lehkonen late after the game-winning goal because he went high on him. That maybe that should be reviewed too. It's like, give me a break. I mean,
they're going to more of a shoulder. To me, when I watched that on replay, that to me was more of a shoulder. He just blasted him with his shoulder with the stick coming up a little bit.
Yeah, they called it a cross-check.
And again, we all know about Lehkonen. He is an abrasive. He's an abrasive player out there on the ice. He does what he does. So
I will say this: in this next game now, if Niskanen misses a game, the Flyers can't play lockdown defense without Niskanen. Like that's going to be, they're going to have a different game plan.
Here's how I think it'll play. This is and I mentioned this earlier today when the word was coming out that Niskanen might miss time, and we'll see. I think the Flyers will probably go with a deployment. If they're going to try to stay left or right, they're going to probably move Myers up to play with Provorov.
Right.
I think you'll probably see a Sanheim-Braun pairing.
Right.
And then here's the thing where it gets really interesting. Goss is fair, but here's the thing. Again, I don't know how much right now, how much AV trusts State Ghost right now.
I agree with that.
And I think if he I think he probably does go Ghost Haig. But I would not be shocked if there's a good, strong – they have a long conversation about Mark Friedman drawing him.
Because he can play physical, and so does Haig. And maybe that's something – but they're not going to be able to play lockdown defense with those pairings, though. They're not going to.
They'll have to figure this out pretty quickly. I think the minute that they sort of know it, they're probably going to be doing that in practice today, where they're going to have to say, okay, what's our situation? Who's going to be playing where? Myers, I think, has earned – if we're going to go just from an –
Oh, yeah.
He does. You could very well keep Sanheim and Myers together and then – try to have Provorov play with Braun. I just don't know if it'll work as well.
Yeah.
I think Sanheim and Braun probably are a little bit of a better deployment. Everybody who's saying Ghost will be up with Ghost will play up with Provorov.
No.
That will not.
They did not play well together.
How do you go from being a completely healthy scratch to playing him on the top to playing him?
No, it's never going to happen.
They don't want that kind of exposure. They don't want him playing 20 minutes a night with his.
But it also means at the same time, I would say, Russ, that this goes back to the forwards now. You have to compensate defensively even more so and get back to the snooze fest style that helped them get to a 3-1 series lead.
And this is a must-win for Philly now. If you go into a Game 7 with a Carey Price, you are asking for trouble, because if that happens to be the game where he is going to completely shut you down, which is entirely possible, that's where you're in trouble. This is a must-win. So AV has to put together his best lineup for sure and his best game plan, and these guys really have to stick to it.
But that's why they pay me the big bucks.
Yeah.
He said in his press conference a few days ago.
Okay.
But what about Michel Therrien? Like, he's off the hook a little bit because of the 5-minute major, and the power play came through a little bit. But that power play, they really haven't changed much, and they better hope it's on.
I think there were times, I think, in the previous game where the movement was getting better, and finally – It finally came through, and AV kind of said the same thing in press conference, that they were seeing things now that were getting better. So now it's a quick explosion of 3 goals.
Yeah,
we'll see if that holds as we go into Game 6.
Much to the chagrin of somebody we all know. Okay, now the Colorado Avalanche, which I think everybody here expected to open up a can of whoop ass on the Arizona Coyotes, did.
I think they opened up 2 cans of whoop ass the last 2 games, basically.
Yeah, 7-1 victory to finish off the series. There's not a lot to say about the Avalanche because they're so good, but I'll just say this because I know a lot of people in the comments were saying, "Hey, Mike, Nazem Kadri scored a couple more goals." Again, Nazem Kadri would not be doing this in Toronto. He probably would have ended up getting suspended again against Columbus based on the way that he has operated and had operated in Toronto. He needed that trade as much as I think the Leafs needed to move on from him, and he's fitting in perfectly. He's playing great on the power play for Colorado. I think it was a move that the teams needed to make. I think the only failing, and I said this when we were talking about the Leafs close, after they had lost to Columbus, they needed a different type of defenseman than Tyson Barrie in that deal. I still think Alex Kerfoot's good, and Alex Kerfoot is a 3rd-line center making $1 million less. Kadri is a second-line center and is playing really well behind Nathan McKinnon. And when they put him on the power play in front of the net, he's got the skill to be able to cash in goals. So, I mean, somebody says, you don't know that, Mike. I do know that. Based on the way Kadri operated in Toronto, he was a loose cannon.
No, he was. I still say the Avs are a juggernaut.
Yes.
And I know everybody's pick is like Vegas, but Vegas, their defensemen are going to have a hard time keeping up with the Avs forwards because they could play it a few different ways. Mm-hmm. They've got size, they've got some speed, they've got some grit, they've got it all. And when they roll 4, it's going to be very hard for Vegas. I get you want to give Vegas the edge in net, that's fine, but the Avalanche can really come at you. And I'm telling you, this series, I know nobody really expected Arizona to win, but I think there were probably some that expected Arizona to give them a series, and the Avalanche wouldn't have it.
Now, this is the thing. Looking more at Arizona here, I look at this team, and the only reason they won the one game was because Darcy Kemper was incredible. They're spending almost $9 million on their 2 goalies. I mean, with all the other areas that they need to address on this team, I don't know whether they can get away with paying Ranta 4.2 and Kemper 4.5, but Kemper the last couple seasons hasn't been able to stay healthy, and they probably need that 1B goaltender. Otherwise, they're going to Aiden Hill for a significant chunk of games. So I look at their situation there, and then at forward, Phil Kessel is not the Phil Kessel of old. He's making $7 million. I don't think he's worth anywhere close to that anymore. I don't believe Taylor Hall, and this is the thing, we'll throw this around. I don't think Taylor Hall is coming back. I think he's going to the highest bidder, and maybe in this market that highest bidder could be Arizona, but they don't have a lot of cap space to work with. I think Taylor Hall's gone. So what do you guys think?
I think there's a chance he's gone. I think if I were Arizona, though, if it's Sullivan who ends up being the GM, whoever it's going to be, I would call Florida and try and trade Yarmulson to Florida with 1 year left on his deal to try and clear that space before I talk to Taylor Hall, because that could be the secret to getting him the money you need.
Yarmulson for Mike Matheson. There you go.
It could happen.
No, but I don't know whether Sullivan's going to want to take a guy who's got 6 years left in his contract.
No, he wouldn't. They wouldn't.
But Jan, the one thing that Chaika did, and some people will criticize, he got Keller signed on a long-term deal. He got Schmaltz signed on a long-term deal. He got Dvorak and Chikrin and Ekman Larson signed to a long-term deal. Now, you don't know whether that is a recipe for success because it depends on how these players develop over the next few years. But he did get them locked up. But there's a lot of area here where, Vinny Hinostroza, does he come back? Richardson, does he come back? Carl Soderberg.
Hold on. I have breaking news. Yeah. Dave Portnoy has tweeted that they're in talks with the Buffalo Bills to name it Barstool Stadium. That would be my dream right there. That's a match made in heaven there. Dave
Portnoy is too much of an asshole for the
Let's all hope this happens. Go ahead.
Masshole. There you go. That's what it is, masshole. But anyway, in terms of the Arizona Coyotes, I look at this team, Jan, and I don't know whether they're offensively challenged now with Taylor Hall. I don't know if they're going to be able to score enough goals without him.
Yeah, the problem is if you look at their contracts, right, there's a lot of money freeing up after next year, right? So Stepan's at $6.5 million for 1 more year. Right. You got Grabner at $3.35 million for 1 more year. And then on their blue line, you said Goligoski, $5.475 1 more year. You're almost at $5 million 1 more year. Demers, $3.9 million for 1 more year. So the problem is for next year, they're kind of hamstrung in terms of trying to improve that roster because they have an enormous amount of cap space that's taken up. So either A, they go the buyout route, which I don't foresee them going, or B, they try to move assets to free up some room to create some cap space. So I don't think they're bringing back Hall. I mean, look, we need to see a lot more to Barrett Hayton. I think Hayton's going to get a real shot next year in order to try to fill one of those roster spots to try to provide some offense. I mean, you talked about goaltending, right? So originally, Kemper was supposed to be the backup and Ranta was supposed to be the starter, right? Granted, that kind of flipped substantially, which is why they're quote unquote somewhat stuck with the Ranta contract for at least another year or so. So I don't see them being able to move it. The only way I could see them maybe moving maybe moving Ranta maybe is if the goaltending musical chairs keeps going and one team gets left out and there's no more chairs left and they need kind of a decent 1B type of goalie, and then they can maybe move Ranta. But Ranta's had his own health issues.
He has.
You're not going to get a whole lot back at best.
He is a backup at this point. We all knew
you're
he
hoping
was
to
a
free up
backup.
some room. That's really where you're going for. Look, I don't think Hall's coming back. I think also their performance against Colorado didn't necessarily help the team's case to bring him back, because it's kind of hard to see from watching that series. You see just how wide the divide is between those two teams. And is he going to want to stay there or maybe go to a contender that he thinks is a lot closer to Colorado or Vegas to contending?
Yeah, and I think Russ made a good point, Anthony. When it comes to those middle of the road, high priced defensemen who all have 1 year left, Goligoski, Yarmulson, and Demers, with a youngster like Victor Soderstrom on the come. One way they could save money is trade one of those guys with a year left in their contract, and there'll be teams looking for a veteran defenseman plugged for a year.
Absolutely.
Bring Soderstrom.
Toronto.
What's that?
Maybe Toronto.
I think Toronto's looking for a longer term solution than 1 year.
Could be an alternative. I mean, if they decide to go more than one defense.
If the market's dead for them, though, they might have to.
If the market's dead, that may be their option.
Yeah. Anything's possible. There's gonna be a lot of stuff going on, but this team has played sort of fast and loose with the salary cap over the last few years, trading for Datsuk, trading for Hossa. It's not going to pay off for them this year, or at least they're going to have to use these guys on LTIR. Like Hossa's got a year left at $5.275 million, but I think the cap hits or the money is $1 million.
Right.
So that gives them a coupon basically if they need to go over the cap for a year, that they can do that.
They're not going to go over the cap.
But they're not going to go over, because I think that owners. I think one of the reasons that Chaika got fired is because they didn't like the way he managed.
Correct.
Terribly. So yeah. But anyway, okay, so let's move on to the other. Well,
and also one more thing, Mike, we talked about, right? With the Hall deal, they gave up the first rounder. So now this year, I don't think they have a first and a third rounder.
Right.
So adding offense, even right now, especially in the draft, where you only have a second rounder, is going to make it very difficult. So they're going to have to get somewhat creative to try to bring in offense. And as Russ said, maybe you do move one of your blue liners. I mean, the guy who I think they'd love to get rid of is Demers, but I don't think they're going to get much back from to try to free up at least $4 million. I might be able to bring in, at least a third line winger or something to provide a little bit more offense.
I think they would trade him if they could get nothing back, but that would be
just to free up the salary. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody wants Demers.
Right. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Now I watched this game intently, and that's the Canucks and the Blues tied 2 games apiece, and it was going the direction that I thought it was, and that I think Russ thought it was, with the Blues up 3-1 in the second period after Zach Sanford scored a really nice goal, picking the top corner on Markstrom. And I thought the Blues were going to sail. And then all of a sudden, Markstrom made a couple nice saves, and then I have to say it, and it just follows my usual script. Jake Allen was Jake Allen, because 2 of the goals that made it 4-3 and gave the Canucks Game 5 were on Jake Allen. They were hideous goals that he cannot give up if they want to win. And now
we can't blame the Mott one, right? Because
no, not the Mott
stick breaking. Yeah,
that was a bit of a freak occurrence there.
No, but the Virtanen goal, and I thought the Miller goal where he had to cover up the puck and he let it get through him and it drifted over the red line. I mean, come on, what are you doing? So
Jake Virtanen redemption show.
Yeah, there you go. So okay, I mean, I look at this series that the Blues aren't out of it, but I have to say, Russ, if they're going to win this, I think they're going to win it with Binnington in net. Yeah,
it looks like that's what they're going to have to do. I think whatever they were getting out of Allen, they got out of him. Apparently, Jake Allen's dad went to Twitter or did an interview and said Jake would like to come back and he'll be a backup. That's fine. So pretty much killing any market value or leverage he might have had by being put into this series. But I think they'll have to go to Binnington, and it's going to be. But it's not all on him. Like, we shouldn't blame this all on Jordan Binnington, because there are a lot of passengers right now on this team, more than there should be. And Berube's starting to, call him out. He is starting to talk about the mistakes. He did that yesterday and they're going to have to rise to the occasion.
I mean, the guy that I thought has not had a great series, which has been surprising given his play last year, is Colton Parayko. I mean, I need to see
he had one goal, I think.
Yeah, but I need to see a lot. I mean, I'm talking more defensively. I think he hasn't been great positionally. I don't think he's been great. I mean, look, when St. Louis took that lead last night, given the way they'd played the prior two games, and given we saw, I'm like, oh, they're in like Flynn now with a 3-2 lead going forward. So to have that level of collapse, especially when you had all the momentum in that game, right? You had just won 2 in a row. You'd come back. You had fallen behind. Ryan O'Reilly was big again. The guy who's been carrying you, and you basically just throw it in the garbage. Yesterday, they have a big uphill battle because now Vancouver comes in with an enormous amount of confidence this game, especially closing 4-3 lead at the end of 2 and finding a way to close it out, given what's happened the last 2 prior games, has to give the Canucks a decent amount of confidence going into Game 6.
Now, an interesting social media thing that happened with the Canucks, and it was a couple days ago, they put up some tweets from fans that were killing them when they acquired JT Miller. And you know what? JT Miller is back to being JT Miller. So
can I show you all the tweets from all the Rangers fans and every comment in my blog the last 2 days criticizing the Rangers for giving up JT Miller in the return they go back? That should probably help the situation.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple things. They got the Canucks got back Jordy Ben for Game 5, but Alex Edler leaves in the third period with a cut near his ear.
They said he's going to be back.
Yeah, I mean, if they lost him, their defense is thin right now as is. Yeah. I think that would be a really problematic for them. But have to say this because I heard them talking about this on Hockey Central, because Markstrom was very important at a very key point of that game to keep them in it, and then they bounce back and win the game. And if they win this series, what do you think that does to the price tag of Markstrom in terms of him getting a new contract with the Canucks?
Boy, I think he can get a 2-year deal. I think they give it to him tomorrow. I think if he's asking for 3 or 4, that's when it's going to drag. And I think the Canucks are going to say, go find a 3 or 4 year deal somewhere else. And in this climate, he might not be able to.
I think if they win this series, he's got obviously a lot more leverage to extract that year. If they lose, then all the leverage shifts back to Vancouver, and they can try to get him on a 2-year. Well, let me rephrase that. If he stands on his head the next 2 games, right, and they lose 1-0, let's say, and the guy's brilliant, then he still has his leverage. If he doesn't play well the next 2 days and they lose, then that extra year that he could have extracted by them winning or playing well, then I think he has a more difficult time of getting it, especially as we talked about. The goalie market's fairly saturated right now, but there are going to be some teams who are still looking for goalies that will be happily turning to Markstrom. But conversely, with the expansion draft coming up and the need to have to protect both goalies, that kind of hurts his market, his ability to extract that extra year to a certain extent in his bargaining position.
Well, I mean, I would say, Anthony, if they sign Markstrom to a long-term deal, that's an admission that they're either going to trade Demko or they're going to expose Demko to Seattle, because they're not going to unless they're not going to expose Markstrom if they sign him for 3 or 4 years at $6 million.
No, you would think not. Again, it's everything's about how this market is going to play this for the next few months in terms of the contracts. I don't know if he's going to get, if he does manage to get them to another round, 3-year deals are possible. I think in that case, certain teams, I think even at a 3-year deal, it all depends on the cap hit too, I think in some ways.
Well, what do we think? What do we think here? Do we think that like the goaltenders that are UFAs, are we thinking that Leonard and Holtby and Crawford are all going to get 3 years or less?
What AAV though?
Well, okay.
That's right. You would think based upon age,
yes,
that Markstrom has the better shot of getting a higher AAV because he's younger to a certain extent than some of these guys, right? Holtby is the one you would think that may have a more difficult time getting a higher AAV based upon age to a certain extent.
Well, he's 30. Holtby's 30 or 31, so
he'll get the highest AAV.
But he's got a lot of wear and tear on him given the playoff.
But he's still going to get he's going to get the highest AAV.
Leonard made, I think, 5 last year on the 1-year deal with Chicago. he's coming off the fantastic year with the Islanders. But he had 3 consecutive one-year deals. He's looking for long-term. I think like the baseline for say for example, I think that the over/under for these goaltenders AAVs is $6 million.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's getting 7.
So remember, Leonard would have taken the same kind of deal Varlamov got from the Islanders, right? So that would have been a 4-year deal.
Right, that's what he was looking
AAV. You also have to factor in the cap is flat now, right? So the $81 million from last year is the same as this year.
Sure.
So you may see goalies willing to stay at a relatively flat AAV in the $5 million or so range if they can get a 3 or 4 year deal, because next year's flat, the year after that's flat, and then you only have a $1 million increase. So you're not going to have a lot of wiggle room in terms of salary cap, creating room based upon what's going to be the next 3 years at a minimum.
And I also think you're going to see a lot of backloaded contracts, because with the amount of escrow for next year, they don't want these contracts front loaded, because say for example, you sign a 4-year $20 million contract, $5 million AAV, and then the first year you get $9 million, which I think that's within the they'll want an $8 million signing bonus. Normally, with the flat cap and the escrow high, they're going to want to get their money down the line further, because the escrow may go down after a year or two.
And owners may not be willing to lay out the cash in a signing bonus in general,
right?
Because they're I'll use the term in air quotes, hurting a little bit in terms of free cap space. More importantly, free cash to be able to dole out that income with the loss of revenue over this past year, and we don't know how many fans are going to be allowed in the building the following year as well. So owners may be a bit reluctant to dole out that kind of cash. They may be more willing to do back-ended, hoping the fan base comes back, the revenue increases, and then have the ability to have that cash in pocket to dole out at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we look at the games tonight. We've got both series at 3 games to 2. One game series at 3 games to 1. Islanders Capitals. Question is whether the Capitals can extend this series further, or the Islanders move on to the second round. Russ, I was surprised that the Capitals were able to sort of suck it up and find something there, because they really had seemed out of it for the first 3 games of the series. If they win tonight, then all of a sudden, Barry Trotz is going to worry about his team starting to feel it, because then all of a sudden you've got Ovechkin and Holtby and Carlson and all these guys who've won a Stanley Cup in the last couple of years, on your heels again.
I mean, I think Backstrom's coming back this game. I thought Trotz's answer was kind of weak and generic, that, well, they make sure they plan on Backstrom being there every game for their game plan, and if he's not there, okay. It's like, no, Barry, there's a big difference if Backstrom's not in there as if he's in there. You don't play it the same way.
How is it a week? What are you looking for in his response? Okay,
I'll tell you what. You don't have to say it, but there's obvious vulnerability to Washington without Backstrom being in there. Don't say it's the same game plan.
Why does it affect my question to you is, from the Islanders' perspective, why does it affect them?
It affects them because they know they can take advantage of it. If Backstrom's in there, that changes a lot in this game.
So they back. My question is, do they back off? Do they do so? What do they do different?
What do they do?
There's a big
team in this game. Let's start there.
They're the ones. Here's the thing: they're the ones who are up in this series.
I get it.
You understand what Trotz is doing. He's dictating the terms. He's not going to.
But he's not the home team in this one.
He's not going to concede.
Yeah, there's a difference.
He doesn't have to concede, but you're not going to play it the same way. That's a lie.
There's a big difference between Lars Eller as your number 2 center and Kuznetsov.
Yeah, that's another factor. But look, the Islanders are playing well. Varlamov is playing as good as we've seen him. This is going to be a tough game, but I could see this one being like the big overtime kind of game where I could see the Caps grinding this one out. I don't know who's going to win. I'll be honest. I could see it going either way, but this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be a fun one to watch. So I do think if Backstrom's back, this is the one to watch, because then I think we will see the Caps finally at least playing what we believe is the best hockey they can play, because they're just a weird team, man.
So to me, the guy I want to see what Anthony Beauvillier does today. He was great last round. Mm-hmm. He was good early. I haven't seen an inordinate amount from him the last couple months. Barzal, I think, has stepped up his game.
Yeah, Barzal.
Jean-Guy Pajot has been really good the last couple of games. We know what Pelican Pulak. We know what that fourth line.
And I don't think Clutterbuck's going to play. I don't.
No, but again, Kuhnhackl can slide in and you lose a little bit, but that fourth line is still pretty effective with him as Zizekas and Martin. this is a game where Bouvallier, in my opinion, if he has a game like he did in that play-in round, I think the Islanders win this game. If not, I think if the Islanders lose this game, I really think this is going 7 because I do think Washington's got the momentum and wins game 6.
I'm surprised they don't put Ross Johnston in there to go mano a mano with Tom Wilson.
Ross Johnston's going to warm up though because he's always warming up. Like they're going
to. He'll be mouthing at Wilson at the.
All I gotta say, he's like the bouncer at the club, man.
He's like Ryan Holloway.
We're gonna go get Ross. He's gonna go watch everything before everything gets started.
He's got the speed bag behind the bench to stay in shape. That's the scary part.
But I mean, the Islanders defense played great. I thought I've seen Mayfield play some of his best hockey. I mean, really, I think he's an unsung hero for that team because he doesn't really have any offense in his game, but he really is good defensively and good physically. We probably need to see more out of Eberle, but in this kind of game, maybe Eberle is the one that stings the Caps at some point. But I think this is going to be like the Flyers game yesterday. This will be the fun and entertaining game of the day, I think.
I don't know because
for a change.
The other game is Flames.
Mike's going to fall asleep and he's going to find out that he missed something.
The other game is
Flames Dallas should be interesting.
Wall yellow.
Any rumors on Kachuk yet?
Stomanex. No.
Is Kachuk out again?
Well, that's the thing. I think that the most interesting thing.
I think today is day 6, so I think he could be back.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was 7 days for.
No, it's 6. I heard it was 6 more. And so today is technically 6, so I think there's a chance he'll be back. I don't know if he will.
Yeah, and then it's the daily Ben Bishop watch, whether he's going to be back or not.
I think Hudobin's in net anyway. So
yeah,
right. Up 3-2. Why do you risk changing? If you lose game 6 and you go to 7 and Bishop is healthy, then
the chat room's right. We should mention Peugeot has been really good.
Yeah,
I said that
starting to pay off.
That's what I said. I mean, as I said, at least I could have sworn I said that, but okay.
We missed that.
La 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 la.
No. Yeah, okay.
I mean, look, they gave up a first rounder for him, right? And they signed him to a long-term deal. So
they did.
He's clearly lived up to that contract, at least early on. I mean, we thought it was an overpay, but you look at the depth at center now with discounting all the talk about offer sheets from Matt Barzal, Nelson, Peugeot is a pretty darn good 1 through 3 down the middle for that team moving forward with Cizikas as your 4.
A couple news notes here, and we've seen the cavalcade of prospects basically signing or being assigned to European League teams. The most recent one I saw yesterday or a couple days ago, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, the Sabres goalie prospect.
Say that again?
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Yeah, he's.
Set that to music, Mike.
I don't think anybody wants to hear that. But he is going to play with, I think, I'm not sure if it was Karpat or one of the teams in the SM Liga. I know that a couple of Leaf prospects, Jesper Lindgren and Philip Kral, were going over to the Czech.
For 3 or 4 months before the AHL ever starts.
Right, and the interesting one yesterday was Tim Heed, defenseman for San Jose, who's a UFA. He's signing a contract with Lugano in the Swiss League, but the contract only runs through November 15th. So basically, that's 2 days before training camp starts. So if he comes up with an NHL deal,
he gets a nice little trip in the Alps and then gets to come back afterwards. Nice.
Some of these guys are not even being paid. It's like they're basically being paid room and board in some of these leagues.
Oh, it's Switzerland. I'd be willing to trust me. I've been there. I will be happy to do that trip as long as they cover my room and board.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is the interesting thing, and I just saw this on Reddit. Bill Peters, who's coaching a KHL team, was just diagnosed with COVID. And, we're all assuming, okay, they're all going over to Europe and those seasons are going to start in September.
Where's he coaching, though? Where's Bill Peters coaching?
I'm not sure if it was Magnitogorsk. I'll check the article, but let me hold on. It was a CBC report. And
sounds like a place Bill Peters would coach.
Yeah, I know. Hold on a second. KHL boss at Ketrenberg. So he's playing. So he's he can go visit the Ipatiev house and watch and see where the Romanovs were killed. But I mean that's the thing. Everybody is assuming that since they scheduled these seasons to start in September and October that they're actually going to come off.
Yeah, I mean, it's all suggested. You're right. I mean, things could happen. There's no question about it. But there is something, just like you always been saying about baseball, just plugging on.
Yeah.
The KHL is probably going to plug on regardless of what happens.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. But all right, guys, good show. We will continue tomorrow. I believe we'll have Kevin Allen on the show. So
you don't know for sure, Mike?
I haven't touched base with him yet, so I can't
How
say
was the promo, huh? You know?
We will when I know for sure.
Make sure to put up the banner
Wow.
Fridays with Kevin Allen.
Russ channeling his inner douchey doucherson over there.
He thinks he's the show producer over there. Nice shirt, by the way. That looks like the Panini. It looks like what was the old UFC shirts?
Oh yeah.
It looks like a UFC style shirt. Like what was that company? I'm forgetting the name of it.
I know, but I know who you're talking
Affliction.
about.
Looks like an Affliction shirt.
Yes.
Of course, I'm over here with my Niagara beer shirt on here. So
This is just the
Mike's in a typical Mike shirt.
You know, Mike, they did want the name of
it's a nice shade of
I got
Mike.
the shark on. I got the Greg Norman on.
It's the nice shade of Mike.
my goalie FP suggested Gray Tang Stadium. I like that.
Great.
For Jan Levine, for Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen. I'm Mike Jello. Thank you.
He's the blue-sided Michael Ogello.
This is in Idaho. And remember, without the buds, it's just hockey.